Her husband chose the housemaid over his own wife. But what led him to make such a shocking decision, and one could have expected? Daniel, a successful businessman, and Clara, his ambitious, accomplished wife, seemed like the perfect couple on the outside, but behind closed doors, something in their marriage had begun to crack. Silently, almost imperceptibly, Lily, the quiet housemaid who had never had anyone before, appeared to be just a helper, but the way she fit seamlessly into the household, the way Daniel seemed to notice her more, hinted at a story, and one was ready to hear. Was it neglect? Was it resentment? Or something far more complicated brewing under the surface of a house that should have been filled with love? And as Clara watched, powerless to understand what was happening, one question lingered. How could her husband, the man who once loved her fiercely, choose someone else over her? The first sign of displacement happened quietly. During dinner, Daniel asked Lily to sit beside him at the dining table. A simple gesture that felt like a quiet earthquake. "Lily, sit here," he said, motioning to the chair next to him. Lily froze, her hands clutching the tray of appetizers. Her eyes flicked toward Clara, waiting for her to object. Clara, poised and commanding, said nothing. She forced a polite smile for the guests, but her heart raced. "Daniel, I think you're confusing roles," she said softly. "I'm not confused," he replied, calm, measured, distant. "She should sit." The words hung in the air like smoke. Clara felt something inside her chest snap quietly. Not a shout, not a fight, but a sinking weight. The space that she had once owned, the intimacy, the warmth, the authority in her home, was quietly being taken from her, one polite gesture at a time. Lily obeyed. She wasn't arrogant, nor bold. She simply sat, folding her hands neatly, her gaze lowered. But her presence alone shifted the entire balance of the room. Clara remembered flashes of the past nights, when she used to pour tea for Daniel herself. Evenings when they sat together talking about his day, when she laughed at his corny jokes and brushed a hand across his shoulder. That woman felt like a stranger now. "Sir, are you all right?" Lily asked quietly, her voice soft, careful, almost cautious. The question was innocent, or so it seemed, but in that instant, Daniel felt the warmth of attention he hadn't felt in months. Clara's eyes narrowed. She noticed the subtle tension in Lily's posture, the quiet awareness that seemed almost too precise. She couldn't place it, but something about the maid's calmness disturbed her. The way Lily was filling spaces she herself had abandoned was too deliberate to ignore. Daniel shifted in his seat. "I'm fine," he said, but his gaze lingered on Lily longer than it should have. Clara's mind flashed back. The years when Daniel struggled to establish his business, when she supported him silently, when she carried the emotional weight of both their lives. He had leaned on her, confided in her, trusted her completely. But now, the balance had quietly shifted. "You two seem very comfortable," Clara said, her voice brittle. "Perhaps I'm no longer needed at all." The words were sharp, but her tone carried a hint of vulnerability she couldn't hide. Daniel's eyes met hers, not with anger, but with something colder. Disappointment mixed with a quiet resentment she hadn't noticed forming. He remembered her subtle criticisms over the past months, the nagging, the withdrawal of affection, the quiet but unmistakable erosion of respect. Each little act of dismissal had piled up, a weight she never acknowledged. Lily placed a small plate before him. "Dinner is ready, sir," she said softly, not commanding, not intrusive, just attentive, a stark contrast to the wife he once knew. Clara's gaze darted between them, the room suddenly heavy with unspoken tension. She recalled earlier months when she had begun handing chores over to Lily, claiming she was too busy, too powerful, too successful to care for domestic duties. She hadn't realized how each little delegation chipped away at her place in Daniel's heart. As the guests began to eat, Clara noticed Daniel's subtle reactions, how he lingered in conversation with Lily, how his posture softened when she spoke, how the warmth he used to reserve for his wife now seemed directed elsewhere. And a quiet, terrifying thought took root. The shift had begun long before tonight, and she had been blind to it. That night, when the guests left and the house fell into silence, Clara sat in the grand living room, watching Daniel and Lily interact. Each small gesture, each word, each glance seemed to rewrite the history she thought was theirs, and deep inside, she felt the chilling realization: some spaces, once surrendered, are impossible to reclaim. This is scene 1. Fully cinematic, layered with hook, character intro, wealth of status, backstory, flashbacks, and foreshadowing, with dialogue to keep engagement high. Daniel stood by the window, staring at the city lights below, the hum of traffic a distant echo against the quiet of their penthouse. Clara had retreated to her study, claiming an urgent work email, but Daniel knew the truth: she was avoiding him, as she had been doing more and more lately. Months of small slights, subtle criticisms, and cold silences had piled up. He remembered when Clara used to notice the little things: when he stayed late at the office, she would have his favorite tea ready. When his business stumbled, she stayed awake with him, discussing every option. Those nights felt like a lifetime ago. Now, whenever he tried to talk, she dismissed him. "You're overthinking again," she said, brushing him off, her eyes scanning her phone. "Can't you let me work in peace?" He had tried patience. He had tried understanding. But the emotional distance had grown into a canyon he couldn't cross alone. Even intimacy became a memory, reduced to fleeting, forced interactions that left him more isolated than before. And that's when Lily had entered their lives. The quiet housemaid had been assigned by Clara herself. Someone to help around the house, she had said. Yet from the start, Daniel noticed the difference. Lily listened, truly listened when he spoke, not with judgment, but with subtle attentiveness. She noticed when he tensed, when his thoughts wandered, when his pride struggled to hold itself together. He didn't seek her out consciously. It happened quietly, in moments between tasks, in a shared laugh over a minor mishap, in her soft questions that no one else asked anymore. And the more Clara withdrew, the more Daniel leaned unconsciously, instinctively into that gentle presence. A flashback came suddenly: Clara laughing with him on a rainy night years ago, the city's lights reflecting in her eyes as she rested her head on his shoulder. He had felt so supported, so alive. Now, in the same apartment, the laughter was gone, replaced by the hush of empty halls, punctuated only by Lily's soft voice offering comfort where none had existed before. He didn't realize when it became habitual, this silent companionship that had begun as solace but was slowly replacing the intimacy he once shared with his wife. He only knew that with every dismissive remark from Clara, with every night she ignored his presence, Lily became more than a helper. And the terrifying part, Daniel knew this wasn't just attraction, it was a need born from years of neglect, withdrawal, and the slow erosion of the respect and love he once thought unshakable. The next evening, Daniel found Clara in her study, surrounded by stacks of documents, and her laptop screen glowing brightly in the dim room. He hesitated at the doorway, watching her fingers dance over the keyboard, her eyes fixed and unyielding. "Clara," he began, his voice careful, almost tentative. She didn't look up. "What is it, Daniel?" "I'm busy, I wanted to talk," he said, stepping closer. "We haven't really talked in weeks." Clara finally raised her eyes, a faint crease between her brows. "Talk about what?" "Your concerns again." She leaned back in her chair, arms crossed, the words sharp but weary. Daniel swallowed, trying to keep his voice steady. "I miss us. I miss how we used to be before everything got so complicated." Clara's fingers hovered over the keyboard, hesitation flickering in her eyes for just a moment before she shook her head. "Daniel, we are fine. Stop overthinking. You're imagining things." "I'm not imagining," he insisted, stepping closer. "I've been trying to reach you, but every time I try, you push me away. You criticize, you dismiss me. I feel like I'm disappearing in my own home." Clara's face hardened. "You're exaggerating. I have responsibilities. My career. Our household, it's all on me. I can't cater to every insecurity you have." Daniel's chest tightened. "It's not about insecurity. It's about partnership, about respect, about feeling wanted. I just want to feel like I still matter to you. Clara let out a long sigh, frustration bleeding into her tone. Daniel, I work hard for us. Don't make me feel guilty for doing what I have to do. Her words stung, but he didn't retreat. He remembered the nights she used to share stories about her day, the small gestures of care, the laughter that filled their home. I'm not asking for everything, Clara, he said softly. I just need you, here, not in the house, not as someone who manages tasks, but here, with me. Like before, for a moment, Clara's eyes softened, almost regretful, almost nostalgic, but she shook her head, standing abruptly. I can't do that right now, Daniel. Maybe later, later. That word had become the barrier between them, recurring over weeks and months. Daniel turned and left the room quietly, the weight of her dismissal pressing on his chest. In the hallway, Lily was quietly folding a blanket, her presence calm and attentive. He glanced at her and realized, without meaning to, that the comfort he longed for had slowly been moving closer, quietly filling the gaps Clara had left behind. And each time he looked at Lily, he felt a warmth he hadn't felt from his own wife in months. Clara walked through the grand hallway, her heels clicking softly against the marble floor, the sound echoing in the silence of the house. She paused at the doorway of the living room, catching Daniel and Lily laughing over something trivial, a shared joke about a dish he had accidentally spilled. Her chest tightened. How had it come to this? 4 years. She had been the center of this household, the one who managed everything, from the finances to the smallest domestic details. But as her career flourished, she began to believe that her success made her indispensable, and that Daniel would simply adapt to her ambition. She didn't notice how her voice had grown sharp, her patience thin, or how her late nights and constant work calls slowly pulled her away from him. Sir, your files are on the desk, Lily said gently, stepping aside to let Daniel pass. She didn't demand attention, didn't seek to dominate, yet everything about her movements conveyed care and attentiveness. Clara's eyes narrowed, catching the small, subtle ways Lily anticipated Daniel's needs. A perfectly folded tie, a hot cup of tea, a gentle word at just the right moment. Clara's mind flashed back to their early years together, to nights when Daniel would arrive exhausted from work, and she would run to him with a warm smile and a listening ear. She had cherished those moments, but now she had stopped noticing the importance of such gestures, dismissing them as obligations that belonged to someone else. What's so funny? Clara asked, her tone sharper than she intended. Daniel paused, unsure whether to answer. He looked at Lily, who met his gaze without hesitation, her quiet confidence making him feel unexpectedly safe. Nothing important, he said finally. Just a minor mistake in the kitchen. Clara swallowed her irritation, but inside, a seed of unease grew. Lily wasn't just filling gaps in the household, she was filling the emotional void Clara had left behind. And every laugh, every gentle touch, every question spoken with genuine concern only reminded Clara of how far she had drifted from the man she once loved. She remembered the nights she had ignored his calls, the times she had dismissed his worries, the moments she had chosen work over companionship. Each memory struck with the weight of realization. She had handed over more than duties, she had handed over her place in his heart. And Lily was quietly, innocently stepping into that space, unaware of the storm she was stirring. Clara felt a chill as she turned away. The house no longer felt entirely hers. Every room, every corner, whispered that something fundamental had shifted, and deep down, she sensed that this shift was irreversible, unless she confronted it before it was too late. The weekend arrived, and with it, the familiar quiet of the house. Clara had taken her laptop upstairs to catch up on work, leaving Daniel to handle the routine of a Saturday morning, an odd reversal from the life they once shared. Sir, breakfast is ready, Lily said, entering the study where Daniel had set himself on the couch with a newspaper. The sun streamed softly through the large windows, highlighting the elegant furnishings of the penthouse, the kind of wealth that had once been their shared dream. Daniel looked up, meeting her gentle gaze. "Thanks, Lily," he said, a small smile forming despite the heaviness in his chest. He noticed how she had anticipated everything, the toast perfectly browned, his tea at the exact temperature he liked, the subtle placement of the newspaper he preferred to read first. She handed him a cup, her hand steady. "I thought you might want to start with this article," she said, nodding toward a business column he had been following. He paused, startled by the thoughtfulness. "You remembered," he said softly. She smiled faintly. "Of course, sir." Daniel stirred his tea slowly, realizing how much he had been missing. These moments, small, ordinary, quiet, were the gestures that had once belonged to Clara. Gestures he hadn't realized were essential until they disappeared. And now, without thinking, he found himself leaning into Lily's calm presence, relying on her for the connection and comfort he had longed for. Meanwhile, upstairs, Clara tapped at her keyboard, oblivious to the quiet intimacy unfolding below. She remembered delegating small chores to Lily months ago, thinking it would free her time for work and social engagements. She hadn't noticed how each act of delegation slowly replaced her presence in Daniel's daily life. A flashback surfaced: Clara laughing with Daniel over spilled coffee, brushing a lock of hair from his forehead, listening to his worries late at night. Those nights had been theirs, exclusive and intimate. Now, every moment Lily shared with him in her absence felt like a quiet encroachment, though Clara remained unaware of it. Daniel cleared his throat. "Lily, I wanted to thank you for all the small things. I didn't realize how much I needed them." Lily's gaze softened. "It's nothing, sir. I just tried to help." He smiled again, more genuine this time, feeling a warmth that had been absent in his marriage for months. And in that simple act of appreciation, something shifted, something Clara could not yet see. Lily was no longer just a helper. She was slowly becoming the anchor Daniel had been missing. And the house, once filled with shared history and laughter between husband and wife, now quietly echoed with the presence of someone new, someone who fit the empty spaces better than Clara ever had. Scene 5 is complete, showing Daniel's emotional reliance on Lily, Clara's oblivion, and foreshadowing the deepening rift, with cinematic tension and backstory woven in. By midweek, Clara began sensing shifts she hadn't anticipated. Daniel no longer lingered at her office door, no longer smiled at her emails with that warmth she remembered from earlier years. Instead, he seemed distracted, almost lighter, whenever Lily was nearby. "Daniel, have you seen the contracts I left on your desk?" she asked one morning, walking into his home office. He looked up, a small, apologetic smile on his face. "I did, Clara. I'll get to them after breakfast," he said, his gaze drifting briefly toward the kitchen doorway, where Lily was quietly arranging cutlery. Clara's heart twisted, a pang of unease spreading through her chest. Something was different. She could feel it in the air, in the subtle rhythm of the house, the way Daniel's eyes softened when Lily spoke, the way he lingered near her as if he had forgotten how to linger near her. "Breakfast?" she asked sharply, though her voice betrayed more tension than anger. "I thought you were making plans with me." Daniel shifted in his chair, meeting her gaze cautiously. I just wanted to have a quiet moment," he said softly. A flashback flickered in Clara's mind, a memory from years ago. A rainy Sunday morning, when Daniel had waited for her in the kitchen, a steaming cup of coffee in hand, just to share a quiet laugh before their hectic lives began. How long had it been since mornings like that existed? How long had she allowed work, pride, and ambition to edge him away? Clara turned sharply, scanning the kitchen. Lily's presence was quiet, almost unassuming, yet impossible to ignore. She moved with calm efficiency, anticipating Daniel's needs without intrusion. Yet in that very subtlety, Clara felt a sting she couldn't explain. "Lily," Clara said, her tone measured, "though I see. Did you set the table without asking me?" "No, ma'am," Lily replied gently, looking down. "I just thought breakfast would be ready." Daniel cleared his throat. "Clara, it's okay. She's only helping." "It's fine," he said, a calmness in his voice that Clara hadn't heard directed toward her in months. The words cut deeper than she expected. Not anger, not shouting, just quiet acceptance, a silent affirmation that the balance had shifted. Clara's stomach knotted as another memory surfaced. Nights when she had snapped at Daniel over small things. Days she had neglected intimacy. Moments when she had handed over household duties, thinking they were trivial. Each act, unintentional or not, had created this widening gap, and Lily, untrained in love, but perceptive in presence, was quietly stepping into it, filling spaces Clara no longer seemed to occupy. Clara realized with a sinking heart that this was no minor shift. The quiet was a warning, a foreshadowing that her marriage was slipping away, inch by inch, while she had been too absorbed in herself to notice. Scene 6 is complete, showing Clara noticing subtle changes, emotional foreshadowing, and Lily's growing influence, with dialogue and cinematic tension. That evening, the penthouse was quiet, the kind of quiet that made Clara's chest feel heavy. She had been running errands all day, attending meetings that demanded her attention, but the house had shifted in her absence. Daniel sat in the lounge, a book in his hand, while Lily moved gracefully around the room, placing a warm blanket over the couch where he leaned. "Thank you, Lily," Daniel said softly, his eyes meeting hers for a brief, lingering moment. The simplicity of her gesture felt comforting in a way that stirred something he hadn't realized he had been missing for months. Clara entered silently, pausing in the doorway, her heels echoing like accusations against the polished floor. "What's going on here?" she asked, her voice tighter than she intended. Daniel looked up, startled for a fraction of a second. "Nothing, Clara. Lily was just helping me get comfortable," he said gently, closing the book. Clara's eyes narrowed. "Helping you?" she repeated, her tone rising. "Is this really necessary?" "You're an adult, Daniel," he sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It's not about necessity," he said carefully. "It's about, I don't know, just feeling seen, I guess." Clara's stomach churned. "Seen by her?" she asked, gesturing toward Lily. Lily, calm as always, replied softly, "I'm just here to help, ma'am." Her words were careful, neutral, but the subtle attentiveness she offered Daniel in every moment seemed to magnify Clara's unease. Daniel's eyes met Clara's, pleading, almost desperate. "I'm not replacing you," he said. Lately, I feel like no one notices. No one really listens." "It's been a long time, Clara." Clara's mind flashed back to nights she had ignored his calls, weeks she had dismissed his attempts at intimacy, months she had handed off household duties, thinking it would free her for bigger things. Each memory pressed against her heart with sudden clarity. She had allowed herself to drift, to prioritize work, pride, and appearances over him. Her voice faltered, softer now. I didn't realize. I thought you understood. I thought you knew I just." Daniel gave her a small, sad smile, but didn't pursue it. He knew this wasn't about anger. It was about space he had long needed, and now found in Lily's quiet presence. Clara stepped back, her chest tight, realizing the emotional shift that had been happening right under her nose. Every gesture, every attentiveness from Lily had been quietly filling the void she had created, and she was only now beginning to notice the widening gap between herself and the man she once loved fiercely. And in that moment, Clara understood if she didn't act, if she didn't confront what had been quietly unraveling, she might lose more than just control of the household. She might lose him entirely. Scene 7 is complete, showing Daniel's deepening reliance on Lily, Clara's growing realization, cinematic tension, dialogue, and foreshadowing of emotional collapse. The next morning, Clara walked through the kitchen, her heels clicking sharply against the marble. She found Daniel leaning casually against the counter, sipping his coffee, while Lily moved around, preparing his favorite breakfast with quiet precision. Clara stopped in her tracks, feeling the familiar tight knot of frustration. "Daniel, did you need me to handle this?" she asked, her tone controlled, but laced with subtle accusation. Daniel looked up, hesitated, then shook his head. "No, Clara, Lily's got it." He took a careful sip, eyes lingering on Lily as she placed the plate before him. Her movements were subtle, almost instinctive, yet every gesture seemed perfectly timed to anticipate his needs. Clara's chest tightened. She remembered the early days of their marriage, how she used to place his coffee just so, how she had known exactly what he needed before he said a word. And now, those small acts of intimacy, the gestures that had once belonged to her, were being quietly performed by someone else. "Lily, I appreciate your help," Clara said. Her voice clipped, trying to assert herself. "But Daniel doesn't need a maid to manage his breakfast." Lily lowered her eyes respectfully. "I only try to help, ma'am," she said softly. Her tone carried no challenge, yet the quiet efficiency of her work spoke volumes. Daniel set down his coffee, sensing the tension, but also feeling a quiet, undeniable comfort in Lily's presence. "Clara, it's fine," he said calmly, though his gaze betrayed something more, something he hadn't felt with his wife in months. "She's only helping me." Clara's mind flashed back. The weeks she had delegated chores, the nights she had retreated into her work, the subtle criticisms she had directed at him when he tried to engage. She had unknowingly handed over more than tasks. She had handed over emotional space, intimacy, even companionship. Determined, Clara tried again. "Daniel, I don't want you to rely on someone else for things we used to share." He looked at her, a mixture of regret and longing in his eyes. "Clara, I'm not replacing you. I don't feel heard, sometimes. Not by anyone." The words struck her harder than she expected. Clara realized that her silence, her withdrawal, and her pride had carved a space in their marriage that Lily was now filling, not maliciously, not with intent, but simply by being present, attentive, and human. For the first time, Clara understood the depth of what she had lost, and the urgency of reclaiming just her role in the household, but the man she had unknowingly pushed away. The house was alive with the hum of conversation. Friends and business associates had gathered in the grand dining room, the polished mahogany table laden with food and sparkling glasses. Clara moved gracefully among the guests, serving wine with practiced precision. Feeling a flicker of pride at the effortless way the evening seemed to unfold. Lily, standing quietly at the side, had already served the starters and refilled glasses without drawing attention. Her gentle efficiency unnoticed by most, but not by Daniel. Clara leaned toward Daniel, a subtle smirk on her lips. "Honestly, I don't see why we need Lily tonight. Everything's perfectly under control. She can step aside." Daniel looked at her, his expression calm but resolute. "No, Clara, she stay." Clara raised an eyebrow. "Really? At a dinner with our guests?" "Yes," Daniel said firmly, taking Lily's hand gently and guiding her to the empty chair beside him. "She belongs here tonight." Clara's eyes widened, a rush of irritation and confusion rising. "Daniel, this isn't necessary. Everyone's watching." He set his gaze on her, the warmth in his eyes mixed with a quiet intensity she hadn't seen in months. "Clara, I need you to understand something. When I needed you the most, when I was exhausted, frustrated, or just lonely, you weren't there. You were busy, distracted, absorbed in work or pride. I tried to reach you, to connect, to share my day, but you made yourself unavailable." He paused, letting the words sink in. "And then she came along, Lily. She didn't plan to fill the space. I didn't plan to share my love or my attention with anyone else. But she noticed. She listened. She cared. She made small gestures that mattered, because that's all I had been missing: attention, understanding, presence." Clara's lips parted, the sting of realization cutting through her pride. Daniel continued, his voice steady but soft. "I never wanted this. I never wanted my heart to seek someone else. But your attitude, your absence pushed me. And she didn't take advantage. She simply showed what I needed all along. And I couldn't ignore it." Lily sat beside him quietly, her presence calm and unassuming. Yet every eye could feel the subtle shift in the room. Clara's gaze softened, but the weight of her neglect pressed heavily against her chest. For the first time, The consequences of her actions and inactions were undeniable. The room hummed with polite conversation. But in that moment, the real dialogue had already begun, a confrontation of hearts, not words, that neither Clara nor Daniel could ignore. The tension in the room lingered like a shadow, but Clara's pride was finally giving way. She sat across from Daniel, her hands trembling slightly, eyes glistening as she searched for the right words. "Daniel, she began, voice shaking, "I see now. I've been blind. I've been so wrapped up in my own world, my work, my pride, my excuses, that I forgot you. I didn't see your loneliness, your needs, and I let someone else fill the space that should have been mine." Daniel reached across the table, taking her hand gently. "Clara, hearing you say that, it means a lot, but actions speak louder. I need to see the change, not just hear the words." Tears streamed down her face as Clara whispered, I'm sorry. I admit my faults. I've been careless, and I'll amend my ways. I'll be here for you, for us. No more ignoring, no more absence." Daniel nodded, a mixture of relief and lingering hurt in his gaze. "I want that, Clara. I've never wanted anyone else, and Lily." His eyes softened as he glanced at her. "She's not my partner." He paused, letting the truth settle in. "Lily and I agreed on this. It was a strategy. A way to make you see what was slipping away, to awaken your heart before it was too late." Clara blinked, stunned. You planned this?" Lily shook her head gently, a faint smile touching her lips. "Not planned in a cruel way. I only knew that seeing someone else with your man sometimes makes people realize what they're about to lose. That's all." Clara's lips trembled, a mixture of shame and gratitude washing over her. I understand. Thank you. For showing me, for helping me see." Daniel squeezed her hand. "Clara, love requires attention, care, and presence. Neglect it, even for a moment, and the world outside will notice. Women are not the only ones who can care. They aren't the only ones ready to give attention, to listen, to love. If you ignore him, someone else will, and that's reality." Clara nodded, her heart heavy but renewed. She vowed silently to never allow her pride, busyness, or neglect to push her husband towards someone else again. Lily quietly rose, smiling at the couple. "I'm happy you found each other again. Just remember this, love is not guaranteed. It must be nurtured every day. Men notice care, attention, and loyalty. Neglect them, and the world outside will gladly step in." The room felt lighter now, filled with understanding, clarity, and a renewed bond. Clara held Daniel's hand tightly, and for the first time in months, the warmth of their love felt unshakable, grounded not in fear, but in renewed respect and commitment. And outside, the world remained full of distractions, but within that home, a lesson had been learned: cherish, nurture, and never take for granted the heart that chose you.